the province are in great affliction and reproach. Is Nehemiah in Jerusalem? Is he servant to a different king than he really ought to be? All right. So we've got a bit of foundation there. He's already far away from home. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and the gates thereof are burned with fire. And it came to pass, when I heard these words, I sat down and wept, and mourned certain days, and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. When we had a fire in my home, it was very upsetting. So to hear the destruction of your home is very upsetting. And if you're not careful, you can go all kinds of places in your mind. But just as a present day example, it was very upsetting. And when he would have heard it and he wasn't there, then it would probably have been a shock. And I was there when I saw the fire. So it wasn't a shock, but the aftermath. Okay. And it came to pass, when I heard these words, verse 4, and I sat down and wept and mourned certain days and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. And I said, I beseech thee, O Lord God of heaven, the great and terrible God, that keepeth covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments. For those of you that may be watching online, once again, we are at Nehemiah chapter 1. All right? We are in verse 5, and Nehemiah has just started his prayer. All right? Okay. That keepeth his covenant and mercy for them that love him and observe his commandments. Let thine ear now be attentive and thine eyes open, that thou mayest hear the prayer of thy servant, which I pray before thee now, day and night. Day and night. Okay? We're going to get to some of this in a minute, but I want to get through some of this foundation work first. All right? For the children of Israel thy servants, and confess the sins of the children of Israel, which we have sinned against thee. Both I and my father's house have sinned. We have dealt very corruptly against thee. This is still his prayer, by the way. He is still talking to the Lord, and he's taking responsibility for other people, it turns out. Because he's talking about the children of Israel. He's not just talking about him and his father's house. He's getting involved. Okay? We have dealt very corruptly against thee, and have not kept the commandments, nor the statutes, nor the judgments, which thou commandest thy servant Moses. Remember, I beseech thee, the word that thou commanded thy servant Moses, saying, if you transgress, I will scatter you abroad among the nations, right? Which did happen. But if you turn to me and keep my commandments and do them, though there were of you cast unto the uttermost parts of the heaven, yet I will gather them from thence. I will bring them unto the place where I have chosen to set my name there. Now, these are thy servants and thy people, whom thou hast redeemed by thy great power and by thy strong hand. So what's pretty amazing here? Oh, here we go. Lord, I beseech thee. I want to get back to that. Put your thumb or your finger at verse 10, because we need to get to there again in a second. Lord, I beseech thee, let now thine ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servant and to the prayer of thy servants who desire to fear thy name and prosper, I pray thee, thy servant this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. So let's go back just one half a sentence. And grant him mercy in the sight of this man. Who is this man? The king. Okay? So Nehemiah has given the foundation for the whole thing. All right. Now, these are thy servants. Verse 10. We're going to quickly jump back and then jump back and jump back. These are thy servants and thy people whom thou hast redeemed by thy great power. Now, the Lord had redeemed them in the past. But I get a strong sensation that Nehemiah is now believing for another redemption in the future. What is faith? It's almost like calling things that are not yet seen as they are. Because remember, to the Lord, time has no importance whatsoever. It's important to us, but it's not important to him. He's outside the box. It could be from his point of view. He could just go plop, it's already done, but you haven't caught up yet. Okay? Someone said recently, the healing was done 2,000 years ago. So what if our bodies haven't caught up with the time frame of the healing? You know? Okay, so now these are thy servants and thy people, whom thou hast redeemed in the past, but also, if he is in faith believing for the future, then these are the people that thou hast redeemed again. Okay? By thy great power and thy strong hand. So, obviously, Nehemiah is famous for building the wall. All right? Now, there's an important bit that we need to look at here. In verse 1 of chapter 1, he says, the words of Nehemiah, the son of Hakaliah, and it came to pass in the month of Chislew, in the 20th year, as I was in Shushan the palace. Okay, if you can look on the board, you should be able to see Chislew if you go from the bottom. Chislew is, I think, the fourth one from the bottom, which is November, December. Okay? Are you ready? We're going to chapter 2. Chapter 2 of Nehemiah. It says, this is going to stay up there. You can refer to it if you want to. It came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him. Which month? Nisan. What does it say on the board there? Nisan is?
March, April.
March, April. So from, let's be conservative. From December, January, February, March. 4 months this concern has been concerning him. And if he has truly had that concern on him for some time, it maybe is starting to take an effect. He's been fasting. He's been praying. You know, if you fast and don't eat, you can fast from other stuff. But let's do the traditional method. If you fast for enough time, your body will reflect it. Hopefully in a good way, but you're definitely likely to get thinner. That's likely. You're not likely to gain weight when you fast. That would be unusual. All right. It came to pass in the month of Nisan, 4 months after he heard the news of the wall, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine and gave it unto the king, because he's the cupbearer, which means he's close and he's trusted. The cupbearer is one of those people that could easily poison the king. So he's a trusted man. Remember these details, please. If Nehemiah has been trusted by the king and he is a trustworthy person, which is a nice ingredient to have, if he is trustworthy and the king knows it, then there are some sacrifices that are taking place, which we'll get to in just a minute. It came to pass in the month of Nisan, he took the king. Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. Why do you think? Because he's not in Jerusalem. This is another king that's from a foreign land who would very much see themselves as the light of the world. Why are you not happy when I enter the room? You should be joyous because I, the king, am the light of your life. That's why. Yeah? Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. Wherefore the king said unto me, Why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid. And I said unto the king, let the king live forever. Standard response, oh, your majesty. This is brave, by the way. You know, we need to be careful to understand that this stuff, at that time, depending on who the king was, this could be your last day. Okay? I said to the king, let the king live forever. But why should not my countenance be sad when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, where my fathers are buried, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? Here's the key verse for the whole thing today. Ready? The king said, I believe that the king is a man of action. The king said, for what dost thou make request? Right? Now, clearly, this man has been studying the problem and praying about it and fasting about it for 4 months. So he knows what the problem is. But what did we just read a minute ago from Habakuk? Write down your vision on tables, and even though it tarries, when it comes, it will not tarry. The king says to him, what do you want? Oh dear, I wasn't expecting that. What do I do when the king says, what do you want? What do I do? What do I say? What do I want? So I prayed to the God of heaven. That's a good move. And you know that it was one of those quick ones. Lord, help me. Because sometimes you just don't have time. You know when something happens maybe at work and you're like, don't know what to do here. And you walk from, say, the counter to your computer, Lord, give me wisdom. And then you come back. You jolly better hope that God has given you wisdom in those 4 seconds that you took. Right? You know that it was one of those ones. And the Lord answered him. Yes. So I prayed to the God of heaven. I love that. Because it's really real. That's what I would do. What do I do now? God, help me. And that would be one of the most sincerest prayers that you've ever prayed, even though it's vague. And I said to the king, if it please the king, and if thy servant hath found favour in thy sight, which he had, that thou would send me to Judah. He's giving the authority there to the king. He's being respectful. God is the ultimate king. But for 20 years, Nehemiah has been serving in this kingdom. And he is a trusted member of the king's close circle in that respect. He gives him literally the cup to drink from. So the king trusts him. Okay? This is where we're getting to that sacrifice I mentioned. Okay? And if thy servant have found favour in thy sight, that thou would send me to Judah, unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. Where do you think Nehemiah came from? Jerusalem. So if the servant, Nehemiah, comes from Jerusalem, and he's asking the king, please, can I go and build Jerusalem? Maybe, I'd have to check it, but maybe Artaxerxes, the king, took people from Jerusalem. So you're asking the king who trusts you, can I please go and fix the place that you broke or that you took me away from? That's a difficult request. Okay? All right. So here we go. If thy servant has found favour in thy sight, that thou would send me to Judah unto the city of my father's sepulchres, that I may build it. And the king said to me, the queen was also sitting by him. So maybe the king was being a bit measured and calm. We don't know. Right? For how long shall thy journey be? And when will you return? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. SMART goals, right? Was it? I can't remember the acronym right now. But one of them is time bound. SMART, specific, measured, attainable, realistic, thank you, and time bound. That's what SMART goals are, SMART goals. All right? And the king said to me, how long will your journey be? So it pleased the king to send me, and I set him a time. Moreover, I said to the king, if it please the king, let letters be given me to the governors beyond the river, that I may convey over till I get into Judah. And the letter unto Asaph, the keeper of the king's forest, that he may give me timber to make beams for the gates of the palace, which appertained to the house, and for the wall of the city, and for the house that I shall enter into. And the king granted me, according to the good hand of my God upon me. Then I came to the governors beyond the river, and gave them the king's letters. Now the king had sent captains of the army and horsemen with me. This is a good thing. All right. So we're going to stop there for a minute. So let's get some points out of the way. Number one, a concern was brought. No, he wasn't even brought to Nehemiah. He asked about the city and about the people that were there and all of that, and found out the bad news. And the bad news really disturbed him, and he was in mourning. That's a good way to put it. He was in mourning for 4 months. Then the king noticed that he was sad, and he wasn't supposed to be sad in the presence of the king, and the king asked him, what do you want? Which is amazing, because the king could have been, how dare you be sad in my presence? Go away. But instead, he had some concern over his servant, who he trusted, and then asked him, what do you want? Nehemiah said a prayer, a very quick prayer, and asked God for help somehow. You know, your mind is very fast. It's amazing. You can think of so many things in such a short amount of time. And God is able to do some kind of wonders you don't know. So then the king allowed him the request. Here's where the sacrifice from the king comes. Are you ready? First of all, the king paid for the wood. Yeah? Secondly, he was allowing his cupbearer of some years to go. That meant that he had to have a new cupbearer, who he also had to be able to trust, to fill Nehemiah's shoes while he was away. That's a sacrifice. If the king trusts him and notices that he is sad, then there's a very good chance that the king would consider Nehemiah some kind of friend. That's also a sacrifice. You're going? Okay, he might not rely on Nehemiah for friendship, but he certainly trusted him. Isn't that something else? So the king is not, Nehemiah is not the only person in this story. The king also has to have made sacrifice. It cost him, because at the very least, he was laying up his servant to go and also paying for the wood to let him go and to build. It was also very likely a city that the king took captives from. So the whole request is dangerous. So here's where we get to in this thing. I don't have many slides, and we're almost at the end of what I want to talk about, but I do have a challenge for us. Okay? Last time we had the plan in 4 stages, and actually a lot of it is being covered already in this 2 chapters that we've read. Here we go. The concern or problem. We are aware of this. Nehemiah had made a discovery of a thing. A little while back, especially I think it was in lockdown, but we've referred to it since, Abigail and I were sitting on this stage, and we had the thought of the combination of a person's talent, whatever that is, or plural, many talents, hopefully, next to a person's triggers. Do you remember? And if you smoosh those together, what answer do you get? Now that's going to be individual to everybody. Your talents next to your triggers, what comes out if you mash them together? That could be, I'm not forcing the issue, it could be something that you should work on for God's kingdom. Why? Because something in you is naturally disposed to deal with it because you're triggered and you've got talents to actually do it. Yeah. Make sense? Yeah. All right. So then you have the confirmation, which we dealt with last time. The confirmation, I have what I said, and the confirmation actually came from the audience. Does this apply to me? Yes or no? That's for you to answer. Call or determination, do you remember this? That was when I said this is something that we can approach, and can we be determined to deal with it? Then we have the commitment factor, which is after this message is finished, or last week's, or the weeks before that, after those messages are finished, then what? What do we do? How do we apply the determination? Because you can be determined, I want to do it. Okay, how are you going to do it? Right? How are you going to do it? Today's message is called Expectations and Implementation. So we have to deal with the fact that we need to apply the work somehow. We're finished with Nehemiah for now. There's more to it. He has to build a wall. But the initial ingredients are there because he's a trustworthy person who has a concern, who brought it before the Lord, who asked for help right at that moment when the king asked him, what do you want? And then made his request to the king. The king gives him permission and supplies to do it. Now he's got to do it. We have all of the ingredients for results, but the building still has to be done. All right, so here we go. I've got a challenge, and we're going to repeat the challenge from last week, I think it was. We had 8 steps that we needed to look at, and this will come to now today. Remember I said there's no escape and everybody has to be involved? It's coming. Now this is not a threat. This should be a joy. It really should, but I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet because we're going to have to get through these next steps. Are you ready? It says, to be sure, our goals have the right purpose and the right reason. This is not just for personal gain. Personal gain will come with the stuff that we're should be aiming for anyway. Okay? I don't care about fame. I don't. But what if, just what if, the church suddenly gets a load of people and people actually notice and get some good things from what we're saying here? What if millions of people were to see what we're doing from this mic? Wouldn't that be incredible? You couldn't get away without being at least famous to some people. We'll walk along the street and then they say, I know you. I don't care about that. But what if that's a byproduct of getting the message out? Do you understand? Okay. So we have to make sure our goals have the right purpose and the right reason. We need to aim for the manifestation, that's the right word in this case, of God's kingdom. Because if God sees his timeline as a thing and we happen to be walking along it and he says, right, if you jump over these hurdles here, then when you get to this point in your life, my kingdom will be made obvious. Do you hear it? If God's kingdom is waiting to be, this is good, this works, right? If God's kingdom is waiting to be revealed here at this bookmark, and your path is set up in such a way that eventually, if you do all the right steps, you will get to the bookmark, lo and behold, God's kingdom shall be revealed in your life. That is aiming for the manifestation of God's kingdom. Now that sounds a bit vague. Okay, let's be more specific. I cannot say to you right now, Mr. Sir, Miss Madam, you should be doing this, that, or the other. But we can say, in specific to you terms, whatsoever your hand finds to do that is good, then do it. Yeah. Because if you do what you find to be good, what will happen is your life will change. Yeah. And then suddenly responsibilities will come because of the work you just did. Things will change. The situation will be different. And you will be expected somehow to be different after the act of the thing. And lo and behold, your pathway may change to reach the bookmark where God's will be revealed and his kingdom will be revealed in your life. Write the goals down. That's number 3. Why do we write goals down? So that when we see in 25, 26 or 2027 that we wrote something down in January 23, not many years have passed and then suddenly, just like Nehemiah, what do you want, Nehemiah? Lord, help me. Because then the time is coming. You got to do it. Suddenly. Okay? Now, we need to keep our goals in front of us. Why? Because if we forget, then we don't change our habits. Okay, number 5. Be open and alert for opportunities. If the king said, what do you want? And Nehemiah said, oh, nothing really. I just want to be sad. Oh. Then you've missed that opportunity. That train has just driven past. You know? And by the way, God did give Nehemiah some inspiration there, because if you look at the whole verses, that's a good list. Can I please have permission to go? Also, when I go, can I have letters to pass? Oh, thinking about it now that I've started talking, what I would like also is, because I'm trying to build the wall and the gates and that, can I please have some supplies to do the thing? When you coming back, Nehemiah, I'll give you a date. Right? Okay. Be open and alert for opportunities. Nehemiah saw the opportunity and used it. Okay. Number 6, be patient in our working. He had to wait 4 months for that meeting to take place. Now, 4 months, in reality, 4 months is not a long time. But when you're sad, 4 months can be forever. When you're in the lift with someone that you don't want to be next to, those minutes and a half feels like 10. Right? You know, as soon as that door opens, you're like, I'm out. Right? Be patient in our working. Take opportunities when they come available, and they will become available. And then see where the Lord leads us towards his bookmark. Whose bookmark? His bookmark. Okay. So, we're about to close this sermon. We're about to close this sermon. We're not closing the service. You do not get to leave just yet. Do you hear it? For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can take part of this at home. I'm about to close this with prayer and a list. And so I'm going to let this list run in just a minute. I will explain to you the challenge, the thought, and the activity. Did I say activity? Yes, I did. We're going to do something today. All right. We are going to write, I'm included. We are going to write down some of the things. You can do it in vague terms if you want to. If you have private stuff that you want to keep in here, that's all right. But write them at home when you get home for yourself, so that you can refer to it. And if you live alone, then you're cool to put it on the fridge, aren't you? Yes. Here we go. I want you to think about, and you're going to write down, some examples are here. What do you believe God for in terms of your relationship with the Lord? Let's do things in nice priority in this case. We are at church after all. What do you believe God for the future? For your relationship with him? What about for your church? What about for your home? What about for your witness? What about for your neighbourhood? What about for your family? What about for your aspirations? If my aspirations are not godly, then there is no reason for God to give me them. Let's be clear. Now, this is going to stay on the board, so you can write it down if you want to. That's great. But in a minute, we're going to team up and discuss. And you can actually start talking about, with each other, what would be a good thing to believe God for in terms of these categories and more. I'm going to give you one quick story and then we're going to quit, okay? I do believe that eventually you run out of things that you can want for yourself. I do believe that. Some time ago, I had to go into the hospital and I was inside a machine which was very noisy and a bit frightening. And if you start to think about the engineering, it's very, very frightening because that magnet is spinning round. And what happens if the bearings aren't good and it spins out of control? What happens if the magnet, which is very strong, and I only realized this 5 minutes into the thing, what happens if my ring, which is not gold or silver, it doesn't tarnish because it's tungsten, what if this is magnetic? Is my hand going to have to go against the wall of the machine? You can have all these thoughts. So what do you do when you have all these thoughts? You pray. Lord, please help me. Please protect me. Please make this thing not mean anything bad. Lord, I want to not be here. All of that, right? But eventually, you run out of things for yourself. So then I suddenly without prompting, and I wasn't trying to be holy or anything like that. It's just I ran out of my own prayer for myself. So then I'm suddenly thinking, Lord, please bless that person. Help them in their family. Let the people that they come across come to know you. Please help them in their witness, etc., etc. Please bless the church. We want to have more people. Wouldn't it be nice if we had da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da? And a solid people and the Lord's Spirit actively showing forth in our company, all of that. Eventually, I ran out of stuff that I wanted for myself. It was a panicky type of moment, and then I was praying. And then what happened? Suddenly, I'm praying for someone else, right? Then what happened? I fell asleep, right? The machine is noisy and you shouldn't fall asleep really. But I was very still. Very still. I wonder if I was very tired. Don't know. But I must have been at some kind of peace. Because if I wasn't at peace, then you can't sleep. That's how it works normally, isn't it? If you're not at peace, then you don't sleep. Yeah. Yes, please, the ball. All right. Now, so I do not believe that praying for yourself is wrong. I do believe that eventually you run out of your own stuff and you have to be more expansive. And that's what we're going to do right now. So I have some paper. We have pens. At home, this list is staying on the board for a little bit longer. But you could take a screenshot or you could have it in the chat or you could, and we're going to have it on the WhatsApp, by the way, different categories of what things we can apply our minds, our hearts, and requesting of the Lord for. We're going to do it. Don't be too solemn. This should be a joy. I am with my friends and family. Do you know that? Do you know how good it is to be able to share with other people the things that you would like? And we're not doing the if I won the lottery then. We're not doing that. This is supposed to be better than the lottery. Because we're dealing with the Lord, who has access to all of the everything. He has access to the money. He has access to the time. He has access to the blessing. He has access to the power. He has access to the authority. And he is able to do what he sees fit with it, how he wants, when he wants, with whoever he wants. We are meant to get ourselves in tune with what he wants. There are things that will come to us as inspiration that he will reveal to us if we keep talking to the helicopter driver. Go this way, go that way, go straight ahead, get to your bookmark. Okay? So, right now, if you don't mind, please stand up. We're going to pray. If you're watching at home, this is where we quit. and we're going to pray, and then we quit. And you should get your paper and a pen and write down what you could believe God for in different categories. These are not the only categories available. You can have loads more. What about your relationship with the Lord? I'm not going to give you trigger phrases. Think for yourself. You know? Now, if you're not used to writing things down like this, I appreciate that. But for the sake of encouraging other people, we are going to help one another. And in this case, when you help someone else, it will help you. I truly believe that. If you want to teach somebody something, learn it a bit, then start teaching it. It will help you to learn more. That is the way it works. Okay, so we're going to pray. Then we will quit the broadcast and we will split into groups. This is the 15th of January. We have got to get ourselves lined up and ready. The year is already upon us. If we're not careful, it'll be 15th of January 2024. And we cannot afford to have that whole year pass and nothing be done. You know how you've seen people act now, buy while we've got this thing on sale. You need to do it now, and etc. Right? While the momentum is there, we do it. So we're going to do it. If you don't mind, thank you for hearing me this morning. We're going to pray, then we're going to implement. All right? Okay. Dear Lord, thank you again for your presence in this building. We thank you for the singing that we had this morning that was so delicious, that we can be in unity one with another, that we can have time with our friends and family together in the presence of the Lord. Please help us to stay conscious that where 2 or 3 are gathered together in your name, then you are in the midst. And so we ask right now for help in seeing that this is meant to be gathered in your name, that we are your children. We are meant to be the sheep of your pasture. We are working. Help us to be actually working, please, in your kingdom. I am asking for this group of people on their behalf and on my behalf that you give us inspiration now for the things that we should be seeing for the future. We have inspiration to write down some things that we can encourage one another about and get something good done. Please help us as we start to truly embark on this year, that we don't just stay to our old ways and expect something different, but rather that we accept some responsibility and do some things and follow your lead and be alert to your prompting, so that we can do some things that will be good for your kingdom, that we can step along the right pathway so that your kingdom will be revealed in our lives. Please help us to have the right reasons for doing this thing. Guide us in our way so that our reasons are things that are godly and reach for the benefit of your kingdom among other people. In Jesus' name. And as we soon close afterwards, I ask once more for your blessing and mercy upon these people here present. Anybody that's watching online, please guide them as they go along. We're asking for the blessing of you and your hand upon our people that could not be here present today. I have specific names that I want your blessing for. I am asking, and if you agree, you can say amen. I am asking for healing. Once again, I'm asking for healing. I'm knocking on your door one more time for healing and for blessing and for stability and reassurance and all of those good things that I can't even think of right now. But all of the stuff is in your hand to dispense. We ask that you bless your people that could not make it today and that you bless us who were able to make it today. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, so for the sake of the video, all God's people said,
Amen.
and they shouted,
Hallelujah.
excellent. All right.